This is coffee number 5. I'm your host, Lara Schmoisman. Hi guys, welcome back to coffee number 5. And today I have a double treat for you. You get my sexy accent, but you get someone else's sexy accent as well. And yeah, I mean, we had to deal with accents. We had to deal to coming to a new country to bring a different culture, but somehow we were able to do it. And if we were able to do it, I don't see why others can't. It's a lot of great, but there is a lot of work involved, but it's doable. So I want to welcome today a dear friend, but also an incredible leader, Marina Kirschner. Marina is also from Argentina, and she has an incredible career here in the United States in the beauty industry. Today, she is, we wouldn't let her introduce herself. Welcome, Marina.
Thank you. I am so happy to be here with you. And what a nice introduction.
Well, tell us a little more about your career. How old you were when you came to the US, and how did you get to where you are today?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm currently the global head of marketing for Moroccanoil. I've been here for about 7 years, but I've been in the US for about 20 years. And I moved to the US following a boyfriend, now my husband. And, I came here without knowing people. I had a career in Argentina. I studied finance and economics. I was in consumer products. And, when I came to the US, I had to really reinvent myself. And I think that, over the years, I realized that the US is really the land of opportunities. And if you work hard and you really, are determined and have self-confidence, you can really make it in the United States. So yeah, I've been in the beauty industry for the last 18 years. I've been in bigger, larger corporations, and I've now been in Moroccanoil, like I said, for 7 years.
It's very interesting, and I believe you just said the most important keyword there is to work hard. And I think that this goes for any culture, even if you are born and raised here. But I have a question for you. Do you feel like it was harder for you because you came from a different culture?
I think so. I think that, when you're making me really think about it. And the reality is that it's hard to be an immigrant. It's hard to be a woman immigrant. It's hard to come from a different culture, to come from, to speak in a different language. And I went to a really good school. They prepare in Argentina. When I came here, I felt like, as I said, like I had to start from scratch. And it was not easy, but I think that it really goes back to the resiliency and to knowing that you can do it and trusting yourself. But to be honest, it was not easy. It was not easy.
Believe me, it wasn't easy for me either. And you had the advantage that you spoke the language. When I came here, I didn't speak the language at all. So I had to teach myself at the same time that I was paying the bills. So let's talk for a second about, because today you are an immigrant or ex-immigrant. I cannot say that we're still immigrants after so many years, but we're still a woman of color, which are considered in this country. But you're also a leader. Do you think that having the cultural background makes you being a better leader?
I think so. I think that especially growing up in Latin America, where things are not very linear. We have hyperinflation. You have a president that is there for 2 months and then someone else comes on. You have dictatorship. So I think that coming from Latin America makes you more resilient. And especially at a time right now, what's going on in the US, I think that it's really important to have a leader that knows how to deal with things that are not easy or with change. Right? So I think that it was actually an advantage. And that's what it goes back. It's really realizing that even though you're not from here and there are many things that maybe you didn't grow up with, you come with a baggage with a lot of different experiences. So if I'm able to recognize that and then mix it with what's great about the US, because I think that the US has great things. I'm a fan of the US. I think that the way that we, because we're Americans now, the way that we think, how organized we are, how things work here, that mix with the culture in Latin America can be a really great combination.
But also, I go again, it's a hard work. And what I feel also that when I'm gonna be honest, and getting where I am today, it wasn't easy. it's not easy to get to a point of leadership for someone who didn't come to this country. We face even discrimination, not being accepted in a job because you have an accent, and the accent is there to stay. So
Yes.
you need to
Yeah.
learn to accept it and to live with it. And if someone doesn't like it, you need to say it's their problem, not yours. But
Hmm.
also, when you get to this point of leadership, I think it make me um, one of the rules that we have at the DARL, for example, is to be kind. And I think it's things that you learn how to value a lot more because you had a lot of people in your life that weren't kind. And also
Exactly.
how you lead a team and how you select, because you understand the importance of what individuals seeing things from other perspectives can bring to the
Mhm.
table.
I 100% agree with you. And, I find it very interesting. We talk a lot about diversity today in the US. And for me, it was like there from the beginning. I always thought, and I still think that it's really important to have people from different backgrounds, people that look different, people that have different sexual orientations. All of that makes the workplace so rich. So I am glad that some of those changes are happening in the US. And then I think that really, and you and I were talking about this, I think that COVID was actually something that really helped with opening, being open minded and accepting more people from other countries. Because if you think about it, after COVID, people started, they wanted to get out of the house, they wanted to get out of the United States too. So you see more people traveling these days. The stat of people not having passports in the past was really high. The majority in the United States didn't have passports. And after COVID, people started traveling more. They started to be more interested in the world. And what's happening to me today, and you might experience this, I tell them, where were you born? Where are you from? And I said, I'm originally from Argentina. And they say, oh, how cool. It
I know.
wasn't like
Now
that
we
when I moved
became
to the
something
US.
cool.
Now we're
Yes.
cool. And I think that is more because people open it's, parties, social media and traveling. So there's a lot of really great things that are happening now in the US, and people are more welcoming to people from abroad.
Yeah, also, I remember during COVID, I don't know if you were part of that, but I was part of a group, a huge group on Facebook, that it was through my window. And people were starting to show what they were seeing in different places of the world through their window. And it was fascinating.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that, we are facing, especially right now, a lot of issues with immigration and, discrimination and things like that, unfortunately, with the government and things like that. But I think that really, I'm positive and I'm hopeful, and I've seen the change of, people embracing more people that are different from one,
Yeah, there is
from,
an acceptance.
yes.
And there is an acceptance, but I believe that also that there is a validation of bringing other things to the table and other
Hmm.
knowledge. And in our industry, in the beauty industry, also bringing ingredients. I've been seeing this a lot, and Moroccanoil is a perfect example that you bring different cultures and different ingredients into uh, the beauty space.
Yeah, yeah, it's like being exotic. People really like that. And, when they talk about Moroccan oil, we ask them, what is the one word that you think of? And they say exotic, and people like that today. You're exotic, you're different. People are appreciating that.
And what is really interesting about your role that now you're at the head of global marketing. And but being global means at the same time that you need to understand all these cultures and adapt your brand to different territories. How do you do that?
Yeah, I think that is a really nice and fun challenge to have right now. Look, I think that the globalization is real, and TikTok and what people are seeing have helped actually almost like we are global citizens, so it makes it easier to just to be in different countries and remain who you are as a brand, and your personality. But I think that nowadays, on a brand that is expanding into different countries, it's really important that you know who you are. You know what your personality is, what consumers come to you for, what's ownable to you. So that has been one of the challenges, and we realize that actually the brand and the ethos of the brand and the DNA actually resonates in most countries in the world. And that tells you that like globalization is real and is here, but there are other things that are challenging, regulatory stuff and ingredients and, things like that we can talk about. But yeah, those are some of the
But did
things.
you see something like in the brand image or something that resonate with one culture that didn't work with another culture?
Well, the visuals that we use, the models that we use is something that I think the industry has evolved as well, showing more diversity or showing more, in some countries in Asia, they want to see a Korean model or they want to see a Japanese model. So we have had photo shoots or even products that we had to launch for specific countries in the world to adapt to that. Yes.
And so you do the manufacture and everything, but you do a variation of the products just to fit the culture.
We do both things, but for the main part, it might be a different product or a different packaging. Like, I'll give you an example. In Asia, the conditioner, the hair conditioner, in the US, it's usually a bottle, right? In Asia, it's more of a conditioning a mask product, and it comes in a tube. So our bottle was not working in Asia, and they thought that it was too mass, and we're a prestige brand. So what we had to do is, after doing some research in the market, we actually launched the conditioner in a tube. So now in Asia, we have the shampoo in the regular bottle, and then the conditioner comes in a tube.
And did it change the sales?
The sales went up. Yeah, we just launched in all of the countries now in Asia recently, but yeah, the acceptance is there. They appreciate that that we listen to them and that it's more relevant to what they're looking for.
And now you guys are launching fragrances. Why was that decision made?
I think it's a really great question. At Moroccanoil is really, for us, the consumer is at the center. When I talk about the consumer, it's a stylist because we started in the salon industry. And for us, the stylists and the professionals are really at the core of the business. So the stylists and the consumers are really what drives most of our decisions, right? So we are very consumer centric, always listening to the consumer is looking for. And what happened to us is that we launched, so the brand launched with hair care, right? And it has a very distinctive packaging, the blue packaging, and also it has a very distinctive fragrance. And consumers always talked about that. And every time we would launch a product on social media, we would tease it. The first comments were, I hope that is a perfume. So in listening to the consumers, we decided, you know what? We don't play in this category. It's a category that is really saturated. You have all of the Dior's and you have the Lancomes and all those brands that are very established in the industry. But you said, no, you know what? The consumer's asking for this. So if she or he are asking for this, let's give them what they're asking for. And that's honestly how some of the categories actually came to life. The perfume is one, but we also launched a body category, skincare body category. Mm-hmm. And that's because the consumer was putting the oil, the Moroccanoil treatment oil that we use for the hair, they were using it on their body because of the fragrance and because of the argan oil.
I want to make a little pause here and talk to our audience. And this is how important is to listen to your consumer. How important is to engage with your consumer and see that you are responding to their needs. That's what it makes a brand grow.
Exactly. Yeah. I think it's really important to be on the pulse of what's happening on the market. We go out, we're lucky to be in New York City where a lot of the activity and things are happening, but we go to shows, we listen to podcasts. We're all the time with my team, making sure that we are on the pulse of what's happening and listen to the consumer. It's something so basic, listening. I think it's really, really important.
Yeah, not hearing, listening. That's the difference. But Marina, let me ask you about this because I know that you guys, for launching a product, it doesn't come like from one day to another. Hey, let's have a product. For a brand like Moroccanoil, do you decide to go into one territory first? Are you testing the waters? I know also that you guys are doing activations. So how do you plan this? And because it's very different to launch another product for an established brand that's to a new brand.
Yeah. So how we plan innovation is, focusing on the product first. We really, it goes back to listening to the consumer one, and also seeing what's out on the market. Where are the consumers we using or buying that we don't have? So what is that white space for us, right? So, for instance, we didn't have a leave-in conditioner for the longer time, and we know that that's one of the best-selling products in the hair care category. So looking at the data, we realized that was a white space for us. So, it's really listening to the consumer, really looking at the data. We're very consumer-centric, but data-driven as well. So looking at that is a really good way of informing ourselves. And because we are global, the last thing I would say is that we try to, understand what's happening in other countries in skincare, and something in skincare can be translated, especially in ingredients and packaging, I would say, into hair care.
That's so interesting that you mentioned that. But when you launched this product first in the US, and then you try to see if it will resonate with other markets, or you plan it as a launch and as a global international
Global.
market?
Yeah, it's a very good question because we always talk about that internally. We try to launch everything global because the minute that you post something on Instagram and a country like the Netherlands see that, they're going to be, why don't I have it, right? It's like that they don't want to miss out. So we try to have every launch be global.
That's interesting. And how do you forecast how many products you need to make?
It's very hard, and
It is very hard.
many.
It's one of the hardest things that I hear from brands all the time.
What a pain point you're bringing up. So it's actually right now, unfortunately, the fragrance that we just launched, the Eau de Parfum, actually were out of stock. We gave exclusivity to Sephora for the first 3 months, and the first day we went out of stock. So I want to say that we try to do a good job, but not always. It's really hard to know what's going to go viral. This went viral on TikTok, and we sold out. So it's really hard to forecast. So yeah, it's what we do is obviously we do look at a historical data. We look at research. So many times we commission research around the world to see what the trends look like. And then we have safety stock. It's like that's something that I think is really important. You have stock for many months, and you try to, and then you cross your fingers.
Yeah. And if you have a plan B, that if it doesn't sell, you're gonna make, that's what marketing is about.
So the best plan B that we have, and for those listening, is that we, it's a sold out 5 times kind of thing that many brands use. Really,
Yes.
the hidden story behind that is that you didn't forecast correctly many times.
That's a good trick. That's a very good trick. But okay, you mentioned it before. TikTok is a game changer for many brands, but for many brands, it's not so many a game changer because let's let's talk about TikTok for a minute and what are the truth about TikTok. TikTok shop is not easy. It takes a lot of work and it's pricey. I'm not going to say that it's more pricey
Yeah.
than other strategies, but it's something you need to contemplate. So what was your approach to TikTok shop?
We started testing it like every other brand, and we had a lot of conversation with our agency and other brands as well. And you have to just test it. But it's true that our approach was to start that way first, and then we also tested it, investing more money, and we realized that unfortunately sometimes it is about spending more money, but it's also so important is having the right content. It's like you really need to understand what is working on TikTok, what is resonating, and really gear your content to that. And for brands that are in prestige, I find that, Lara, a little difficult because TikTok is not about that, what you have in travel retail, where you see at Bloomingdale's or Saks, right? It's a little more scrappy and authentic. And sometimes for brands like us, it's a little hard to be who you are not. So how do you adapt who you are to a platform like TikTok? So I think that the content is something that is really, really important if you want to play there and play well.
Yeah. But also, as you mentioned, the price point, you need to understand where your audience is. For luxury brands and prestige brands, I feel like TikTok and TikTok shop can give you a great brand awareness, but not necessarily the purchase will happen there.
Yeah, exactly. I think that it's exactly what you said. Like we just did a campaign, and the TikTok shop sales is not the way to measure that only. You have to see the halo effect that it has. And that's what happened many times. It's hard to measure some of the marketing initiatives that you do, right? Like what is the
I love
ROI? What is
I
the click?
love that I'm thinking about asking you a question and you're already answering it.
It's always really hard to convince, the CEOs of the world, right? But when you invest in TikTok and you have the right content and the right amount of budget and investment, you can see a halo effect, but it's not going to be on TikTok Shop only.
Yeah,
It's going to be on other
I
things.
mean, everyone who knows me know that I love data. Data is so important, but it's really hard to understand sometimes in these days the consumer journey because you need to create so much brand awareness so the consumer might end up buying in Amazon or in your website, but they went and find you. That's why we had this conversation already, how important it is to have the search everywhere optimization that everyone can find you.
Yes, yes. And I think that it's a great conversation to have because I really believe that the consumer today, the lines between the channels have blurred. And I
Yeah.
think that we as marketers talk about this product is a mass product, this product is a prestige, this is a professional product, this is a D2C. And I think for the consumer, I asked my daughter, she's 13, where do you buy that, mass or prestige? And she said, what are you talking about? And I think that's what's happening with the consumer. They just buy the products. They see it on TikTok, they like it, they buy it. And for them, it's not about each of the channels. So today, it's more important than ever to understand why the consumer is shopping in each of the channels. Is she going to Sephora to discover? Is she going to the salons for the expertise? Is she repurchasing on Amazon? So once you understand that, it's easier to sell, it's easier to communicate to the consumer. And that's why it really goes back to being consumer centric.
Yeah, and it's understanding who is your consumer. And we had discussion too before that a lot of the brands and many younger brands also make this mistake that is have a really nice branding and packaging and all that, but it's all about the brand. And right now it's not all about the brand. It's all about people are not buying anymore because you have a nice packaging. They want performance, they want that social proof, but also they want to know that it's accessible to them and that their peers are consuming it.
Yeah. And to add to that, they want to identify with the purpose of the brand too.
Yes.
So I think like sustainability and, the organizations that you help, and do you have a co-founder? And those type of things are really important for people. They're looking for brands to provide a lot more than just a product.
Yeah, absolutely. There people are attaching to values because there
Yes.
is so much to choose right now that when people are making a lot more informative choices. But at the same time, I think that this is a challenge that we have as marketers because the attention span is so short
Yeah.
that we need to communicate these messages in a very short amount of time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I think and be very simple too. And that's one of the things that we are and how we communicate at Moroccanoil. We are very simple as a brand. So we really focus on the product performance is really important. But the simplicity of talking to the consumer, this is what you're looking for. This is what we give you. So I think that in a world that is there's so many choices and there's just like so much going on, I think that breaking through the clutter and being very simple and to the point is very important. But to your point, I think performance, when someone thinking of starting a new brand or, I think performance is really important because you don't want your consumer to buy your product once and then go to something else.
Yeah, absolutely. You want that loyalty that it's so important to have a repeat consumer because acquiring a consumer is very expensive. So you need to make
Exactly.
sure that you do marketing techniques so you can keep that customer to keep coming and coming, and then you have a lifetime value of the customer. And I think
100%.
that's something that a lot of people are not keeping in consideration.
Exactly.
But Moroccanoil right now is growing. It grew a lot in this last I mean, even 7 years since you're with the company, you have seen a transition from the brand.
Yeah, we were the brand has doubled in the last, I want to say, 6-7 years. We have grown globally, but also in the US as well. So yeah, we have a great team, a great product, and yeah, we're lucky to have seen growth. We have expanding into new categories, and yeah, the brand has been growing.
So how you approach the growth? Because a lot of brands are say we're growing, but also we are spending. And when you plan, I'm not going to ask you overall the company because probably you're more well related or connected with the marketing budget. But when you plan your marketing budget, what are you thinking? Are you thinking about, I'm doing this for brand awareness? What are the conversations that you have with your agencies? You try to be everywhere in the market. Are you analyzing what product goes into a niche or even a sub niche? Are you trying to target them specifically? And also, I have another question for you. I'm throwing everything together
Yeah.
because I've seen in specifically Moroccanoil, you have a huge generational gap. And there is a legacy from mothers to daughters on giving these products for the hair that they work for them. So
Yeah, you're
how do you
such a
approach?
marketer. You're such a
It's
marketer. All really great questions. I love it.
Uh, but
Um,
but the
so,
question is, it's really hard because as a marketers, we always trying to have one target audience. But
uh-huh.
you have this generation and after generation. So how do you approach that legacy?
Yeah, it's we actually, I worked for different beauty brands throughout my career, and Moroccanoil is the one that resonates with every single demographic and generation, really. And that is it's a great brand to be part of, but it's also a huge responsibility. So for us, we know who is always knowing about who your target consumer is. Like you have a consumer that, you work with your agencies and you're briefing someone, right? So you have your consumer, but also I think that it's important to have some brands that are going after a younger consumer, or some brands are going after a little more of a mature consumer, right? So it really depends on the needs of the consumer. But going back to your question, how do we plan the year? Right, how do we build the budgets, how do we build the marketing plan? A lot of that starts with the strategy, and it starts with innovation, right? So to us is really about the how do we bring innovative products, new products to the market, but also how do we continue, and I think this is really important in marketing, how do you continue to support your core business? I think that as marketers, it's easier to usually launch a new product. It's more exciting, fun, it's easier to sell it, right? But how do you continue to promote your core business? So we're always looking at that. How do we continue to balance core and innovation? So that's one of the things that we start with. What is the innovation? And based on that is populating the budget. So a lot of that starts with innovation and core business support.
And how do you transmit this message? Because I mean, I can totally see it. A mother saying to a daughter that her hair is out of control, this is what it works for me. How do you create that legacy? Is it messaging that you guys work around, or is something that just happened naturally for your brand?
Yeah. One of the things that, going back to the DNA and the core of the brand, is the stylist. And now it has changed a little, but based on past surveys and research, when you ask consumers how did they try a new product, it's a stylist. Many of them discovered the products when they went to the stylist, and that's how really the brand started. Our co-founder found this oil, the argan oil, when she went to a salon because she had an issue with her hair color. So that's how a lot of people discover the products, is through the stylist. So to answer your question, how do we communicate our message? A lot of that starts with the stylist. Even when we are at retail, we like to have events and bring the stylist because it's coming from a professional. It's really very targeted. So if you have this issue, they look at your hair, they do a consultation, and based on that, these are the products that you need. So it's not so much about, we need to understand, is your hair thinning because of aging? Did you just have a baby? So you need to understand all of that, but it's more about doing a thorough consultation, looking at the hair, understanding your lifestyle, and from there recommending the products.
So a lot of the recommendation today comes through social media. What's your take on influencers slash content creators slash ambassadors, brand ambassadors, and what do you think that's the future?
Yeah, I think that partnering with the right ambassadors and influencers is really important. I think that consumers realize who is really authentic, who's really using the products because they're getting paid or because they really want to be part of the brand. So for us, the strategy when it comes to influencers is really to make them as part of the family, just like really choose someone that had been using Moroccanoil for a long time, that likes the products, because they're going to be able to talk to your consumers in a more authentic way. So the influencers are really important. The other ones that are influencers for us are the stylists, right? The stylists that have been using the brand, that have been using the products, and that can actually help and educate the consumers on how to use them.
Education is fundamental. How do you do the education? To me, as a marketer, I always say that SEO, and everyone knows me, that I talk about search everywhere optimization, and that we need to start adapting keywords and long keywords and have them everywhere to have you control your brand narrative. And even today, you need to structure your data for ChatGPT and to appear in AI.
You have to optimize it. Yeah.
Absolutely. So how you guys approach this in different markets?
Yeah. So we work a lot with the search agency to understand what the keywords look like. And actually, we use those words when we're doing product development. So the name of our products are optimized to make sure that when the consumer is looking for something, that we actually have the name on the product or the romance copy. So, thinking about, we're very thoughtful in those things. It's really the little things are really important. And search can be used really in product development, can be used in PDPs, the way that you communicate to consumers, in print advertising. I think that search is really important because it goes back to, this is how the consumer is searching. This is consumer behavior. And marketing is really a lot about that. It's a lot about consumer behavior and psychology, right? Really understanding how the consumer thinks and acts.
I'm a firm believer that PR is part of marketing. But first, you have to have marketing first. You need to have your marketing in place when you start PR. But also, we've seen that PR has been going through a big transition in the last few years, that it's harder to get this organic PR and get placement. What's your approach and budget? Had to modify or just tweak budget to fit the PR new needs? Or have you decided, okay, we're just going to be moving to organic and I decide to put the budget somewhere else?
Yeah. Sorry.
That's okay.
Well, okay. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay.
So how PR has evolved? PR has definitely evolved over the years, and which I think is such an exciting time to be part of PR. And I think that sometimes PR gets a bad PR, like PR is the past. And I actually think that if PR adapts to what the consumer is looking for today, it's a really exciting time to be part of it. And what are some of the things that we do? We know that print, for example, is not, some of the magazines have folded, so it's not as important as it used to be. So you have to really, try to meet the consumer where he or she is, right? So if the consumer used to buy magazines and now she's actually looking at the brand when she's walking down the street, out of home is a great media play for the brand. So those are some of the things that we have been doing. We realized, like, right after COVID, people started to go out, and I used to take the subway and walk on Fifth Avenue coming to Lexington and 57 where we are. And I realized, oh, these are really good media. Like, I'm looking at these like I was going out in the world after like 10 years. And I started to see the out of home. And we're like, oh, you know what? Why don't we put the brand out there? So it's really, those type of things have evolved. Beauty brands didn't used to be in those out of home, bus stops. And now they are part of that. So those are some of the new ways of doing PR and media these days. So you do have to adapt. I tell the team always, let's bake a new cake. What is a new cake that we're baking, right? So we always need to be thinking in advance, what things can we do that are innovative when it comes to PR.
Yeah, that's a great example. But what about experiences? Because right now, something that I've seen working really well for brands are experiences.
Yes. That's one of the things that we've been doing a lot. We just came from sponsoring the Miami Open, the tennis open in Miami. And I think that doing experiences, it's very tempting. The consumer's looking for that. We know that the the shows sell out. Like people are going to concerts more, people are going more to restaurants, people are, going out and looking for experiences. And I think that it's part has to do with like living the today and these like what I call the minor stones and really enjoying the everyday. So it has to do with like people are looking for more of that experiences. So as a brand, we have evolved in looking into that. And really, which I think is key, Lara, is understanding what's ownable to you, what makes sense for you as a brand. Because, Coachella, for example, has been really popular for many years, but doesn't really fit our brand, right? So for us, it's really important to understand we are a lifestyle brand, right? So Miami Open tennis really made sense for us, right? So it's really understanding what's ownable and what makes sense for you and your brand to make sure that the consumer, when they see your brand there, they're like, oh, that's great, makes sense, right? It's not out of place.
Yeah, they can put two and two together, and even though it doesn't make four, but it makes sense.
Exactly. You don't want to be out of place, right? You want to
Yes.
feel comfortable as a brand too. Like if you show up at Coachella, like I wouldn't even know how to do the activation there, right? So
Yeah.
it's like you have to show up in a way that you feel comfortable. Like if I don't feel comfortable
But
in
when
miniskirt,
you
I'm
do
not
an
gonna wear a miniskirt.
when you do an activation, then how do you, because that's a great experience for the consumer, but then you need to make sure that doing an activation is not enough. Then they need to see you again. An activation is part of a plan.
Yes. The 360 that we usually talk about in marketing, I think is really important, and following the consumer through the funnel, I think is really important. So if you understand that your consumer watches tennis and then she's also interested in traveling to certain place, or she buys certain brands, or she watches certain TV programs, you have to make sure that you have a plan to target your consumer where she is and when she is.
Absolutely. Do you guys use data from third parties to
Yes.
understand your consumer?
Yes, we do. We use some of the research companies. We also commission studies in other countries to find out how is the consumer like in India or Korea. For those type of things, we commission data as well. But we do. It's very, very important for us. We're a very data-driven company. We're small, we're nimble and agile, but data is really important.
What do you think is the biggest challenge nowadays? And let's not even go to the tariffs that are currently, as we are recording this podcast. But what do you think that currently is the biggest challenge for a beauty brand or cosmetic brand in this market, an international market? Because same as you, I believe in a global market. I feel like if someone sees your product in another country and they want it, why not?
Exactly. Yeah. There are two main challenges that come to mind. I'm going to start with the unsexy one and then go to a one that is a little more interesting. The unsexy one is the regulations. The regulations are just, something that, for those listening, the regulations usually on what ingredients you can use or the packaging that you can use, that it usually starts in Europe, but in California as well. And if you are a global brand and you're trying to optimize your packaging and formulas, you try to be global, right? But with all of these regulations, it makes it really hard for you to have global formulas. If you don't have global formulas, the MOQs are affected, right? The minimum order quantity is known as the MOQs. So regulatory and all of that is really a big challenge for global brands right now. And I would say for global brands are not really, really big, because brands like Lauder, they're like so big that they could have their own formulas for different territories. Yeah. We are a mid-sized company where we want to have global formulas, but the MOQs are going to be hard to meet if we have too many different formulas.
Absolutely. And what's the sexy one?
The sexy one is content. We touch a little bit on that. I think that you have to produce so much content nowadays to be relevant and to adapt to what the consumer is looking for. That is one of an opportunity. I wouldn't call it so much challenge, but is how do you produce enough content that is actually ownable, right? So, if you are a prestige brand, your content is usually going to be a little more sophisticated, or, the audience maybe is looking for something different and something that is very authentic. Even though you want it to be that way, it's a little harder, right? To produce really quickly and at a cheap cost. So I think that the velocity in which you produce the
And the
content.
cost of content.
Yes, the cost of content. So it's, how fast can you produce it, A, and B, how do you make sure that it's still ownable to you, that is something that represents your brand?
Absolutely. And yeah, those challenges they're really valid. And I think that they are valid from a small company to a bigger company. I think that the same challenges that everyone is experiencing. And so you need to budget for that. That's the only answer I can give you.
Yeah, yeah. I agree with you. And sometimes it's, you do something, you test it, and then be agile and nimble to be able to see what works and then go and produce more of that content. So I would say, have the people ready, the content studios, the photographers that you trust, have those people that you can reach out, the influencers, that you trust, that you can reach out to produce content as needed.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's really important. Like I always say, you have a strategy for the year, but I only plan little blocks of time. And I learned this through COVID. I was working ahead of time, and COVID taught me never to do that again, because how social media is working and the trends are changing constantly. You need to be able to jump into those trends.
Yeah, absolutely. And identify what you think that that is going to resonate, and jump into those that you think are going to resonate. Some of them maybe are not as relevant to you.
Exactly.
So it's really important that you're very thoughtful and strategic at the same time as you're nimble and agile.
I have a last question for you, Marina. And I know that I know the answer, but I want people to know it. As a marketer, how much do you use your gut feeling?
A lot. I think that instincts are really important. It's the art and the science a little bit, right? And then the instincts that kick in. And it's just like so important to really, you look at the data, but also listen to what the instinct is telling you. What is the gut? What is, what is it?
Yeah, like I say, it's a combination of your experience, your instinct, your education, the data. You cannot put it together, but your stomach is telling you something, and it never goes wrong.
And speak up. I find, and I tell my teams, like, if you have a strong feeling about something, just speak up, get a seat at the table and share that. And it has happened to me in the past where I had a gut and I didn't feel comfortable, back in when I started my career, and I didn't talk about it, and then I regret it. Like, I knew that was wrong, like I shouldn't have approved that. So I think that following your gut and your instincts is really important.
Yeah, but sometimes it's hard when you start in your career, and mostly for us being women's immigrants, to speak up, because we already have everything against us.
Exactly.
When you're starting on top of being young.
Exactly. I totally understand that. Yeah, I agree with you.
Okay. Well, Marina, thank you so much for having coffee with me. This was really great.
Thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure talking to you. Always.
And to you guys, I hope that it was helpful. It was really helpful for me. And I always really love talking to another marketer, but in this case, another friend. So I hope that it was good for you too. Leave us some messages in the notes of the episode, and I will see you next week with more coffee number 5.
Find everything you need at laraschmoisman.com or in the episode notes right below. Don't forget to subscribe.
It was so good to have you here today. See you next time. Catch you on the flip side. Ciao, ciao.